Hey, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Pastors Unplugged, where two pastors discuss life and ministry unplugged. In other words, what's life like as a pastor in between Sundays? Actually, that, in hindsight, would have been a really good podcast name, Between Two Sundays. So, but hey, I'm John. I'm a creative arts and worship pastor here at Countryside Christian Church, and this is...
And I'm Lito Solorio, the lead pastor.
And, we're just going to get kicked off here. We got a lot of things going on, but we know your time is valuable. So what we want to first start with, just how was your week, Lito?
So far, so good. I mean, it still feels like it's the beginning of the week. We went from having fairs in our small little town, little carnival at Rose Hill, and it's been exciting to just enjoy that kind of culture, watching the marching band come down, and all the mayor was waving in the car, and all that kind of stuff was a lot of fun.
So we live in Wichita, which is a fairly nice-sized city. I mean, they call us like a mid-size city. I think 750,000 or something.
I think it's
like that.
the largest city in Kansas.
Largest city in Kansas. A lot of pride in that.
Yes.
Got our own flag and everything, which I do not have in that. We should put that in the background.
I feel like I should have it somewhere.
But he lives in Rose Hill, so you still have a nice small town feel.
Yeah.
You got little small town parades.
It's very small. I think we have like 2 fast food joints and a pizza joint and tiny little grocery store. It doesn't have everything you need, but just if you need like a cup of sugar at the last minute because you forgot it.
You got a Dollar General, right?
Exactly.
What else does a man need?
You don't need anything else.
You don't need anything else. Casey's and Dollar General.
Well, that Casey's pizza, I had no idea, is quite
It's amazing.
delicious. I grew up near Casey's in Joplin, never had it, and then I come out here and I'm like, okay, let's try this pizza at the gas station, and it's my kid's most desired pizza now. So
I saw a Casey's Pizza meme that a church member shared the other day that was just laugh out loud. It was great. I'll maybe share that in the comments. Maybe it was really, really good. Yeah. So for me, this has just been a busy week setting up for this podcast.
Yeah.
And video show. I gotta stop calling it a podcast because it's a
now,
show.
It's morphed into something more. You know, we kind of paused things with COVID and all that, and we said, hey, let's pick it back up, but let's take it up a notch. So that's why we have this opportunity to video it. If people actually care to see what's happening during the podcast, I don't know if it's going to be more watched or less watched or just an added avenue of the medium, but.
I know not everybody's an Audible. I'm a huge podcast listener, so I actually do most of my intake through podcasts, like on the way to work, on the way back, and picking up kids. But not everybody's. My wife can't really listen to podcasts. She gets nothing out of it. So videos are a way for people to take in information. We hope that you guys enjoy this.
My videos, podcasts are video form. I love podcasts.
See?
I like to watch it. So.
Yeah. So but we want to offer you guys both of that. So that's what we're doing here. Two different styles of media, audio and video. You can check us out on the podcast and on Apple Podcasts or through Android. When those are up, we'll have this up as soon as we can. Or you can watch video on YouTube. I believe I'm going to do Vimeo as well. So different options for that as well. But there's a lot more things involved with video, and it's been a lot said. I've been trying to figure out how we can make this look a little better back here. I'm a simpleton in my office, so I wanted to be a little more fun, engaging with you guys. We don't have makeup artists, as you can tell. We don't have professional lighting crew.
I'm beautiful. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't need one.
Here's the deal, though. If we can get 10,000 likes,
okay,
we'll wear makeup the next time.
Yes.
So share this.
Yeah, I will comfortably wear makeup because I can confidently say we probably won't get 10,000 likes. So yes,
if we get a million views, we will hire a makeup artist for the next episode.
All right, that sounds good. I'm down.
Challenge accepted. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I was thinking of a couple things, current event kind of stuff. Just recently, the Scarlett Johansson actress settled out of court with Disney. There was kind of this unique thing, and I'm always fascinated by film and that element because she recently came out with this film called Black Widow. It's a part of that whole Marvel's franchise, and she is, talented. My wife and I went and saw the film in theaters and really enjoyed it. But what was interesting, what has presented a unique challenge to our culture is the fact that we have had to work and think differently during the season of COVID. And for her specifically, she makes a film, it gets pushed back several times, and eventually a part of her contract was she should make X amount of dollars based off of ticket sales. Well, then what happens when the company, without really working out a new deal, decide to allow the film not only to come out to theaters, but also come to the Disney Plus program, which is like a home. It's one of these streaming services everybody has nowadays, like Netflix and what have you. But it's fascinating to me because, she waited. They were apparently supposed to have a conversation about it. Disney never called her. So eventually, once the film came out, her lawyer called Disney, and everybody, it was fascinating to me. I felt sad, and I know Disney's kind of a big corporation, and they have probably lots and lots of legal aid on what to do and how to do it, but they kind of attacked her integrity over the whole thing, and it was interesting to me. Obviously, other actors and actresses from the Marvel franchise kind of came to her aid, and they've worked it out since. Like literally, like a week ago, they finally settled a deal so that she got her little bonus. But it's fascinating to me when we live in a culture where something is said. I said this to somebody recently because we're dealing with some unique situations with a thing we purchased, and we're trying to have the warranty play out. And I just called the company and I essentially said, I just want you guys to honor the product, And when that doesn't happen, it feels weird that we have to fight for it when, say 50 years ago, 60 years ago, you'd shake your hand when you sold a car to, somebody. But now you have to have all this paperwork that's like, 3 inches thick of paperwork just to purchase something. But I don't know. Just was thinking about that. Didn't know if you had any thoughts on it, John.
My thought was I forgot that Black Widow was free now, so I need to go watch that.
Correct.
It's been on my list to watch, and I'm like,
it's now on Disney Plus for free. So that's the other benefit. If you really want to see a film early or in advance, you pay money. But if you could just wait it out, I mean, if it's on a streaming service, sometimes it'll come out for free, like this one.
I say free, but you have to be subscribed to Disney Plus, but it's not extra.
Correct.
It's not part of their premium package. Still have not seen that yet. I'm not as drawn to that one as much as the other Marvel Universe characters, but yeah, I mean, I agree. There's lots of legal mumbo jumbo that I think it's necessary because of lawsuits that have happened. It's sad that we live in a world like that today, but yeah, I think it's a necessary sadness.
It is.
Hopefully not. The sadness isn't necessary, but you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, if you are dependent on some sort of income, obviously, I'm the type of person where, I think when I was younger, I was very jealous of people with big bank accounts. But still, I mean, if somebody does a service and, they communicate with the party that, hey, I'm going to do this for you at this price, and then you don't. So, John, let's talk about this. I mean, we haven't had the podcast in a while, well over 18 plus months, and I think our last guest would have been Shane. That might have been longer, but dear friend Shane Wood, Dr. Shane Wood, if you will. But with that said, everything that's gone on, and I hate even saying it, it feels like we're still kind of in this storm, if you will, of just kind of what everybody's gone through. And we call it the time of COVID, the pandemic, whatever you want to call it. But in culmination of that, there's been a variety of issues in our society, our culture, from politics to, tensions with racial tension and even decisions of vaccination, not vaccination, mask, not mask. And it's created, just so much, obviously, negativity. But the word I've used from the pulpit often, it's caused a lot of kind of dissension and division.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've probably known some pastors personally that have left the ministry altogether, or left their current ministry, just due to stress and the division in the church, the pressure that there is of making decisions of, should we wear masks in church? Should we not wear masks? Should we talk about racial injustice? Should we talk about the protests, the riots, all those things? Should we bring those things up or not? And I believe we tried to, in the midst of all of that, preach Jesus and focus on Christ and what we need to do as followers of Jesus. And we even faced the backlash on both sides of the pressure of, hey, speak for me, speak about my opinions, speak on either side. When we just want to stick with biblical truth. And that sometimes that affects that speaks directly into those things. But it definitely was a hard time for everybody. But with our experience as staff on a church that's trying to be the light of the world, trying to be an encouragement to our congregants, but also the world around us, it's a hard tension right there.
For sure. And I think one level that comes to mind, and I don't think like humility, I think is paramount when we're walking through this season, or we as a culture. I've had conversations with dear friends of mine. I have two mentors. They're both named Don, and both Dons and I have talked. They both retired prior to really COVID taking off. One was like a week, his final sermon he had to preach online because their service had to go completely online. And then the other one had retired a few years ago, but he is ministering to pastors and their spouses through a ministry program that he has. But with that said, one of the Dons said to me, "Man, I'm sure glad I'm retired." Like having to make these decisions. I'm glad I'm not you, Lito. And it was funny, and we had a good laugh about it. But it has been tough to make those decisions. And probably the biggest thing is, I'm going to kind of be very vulnerable here. To me in ministry, and no matter what seat you sit in, I mean, you could be a part of the a guest service team as a volunteer, and there's little bit of pockets of information you have, but as the tiers of leadership kind of move up, you're more informed of information or decisions that need to be made. Something that a pastor friend and I talked about just yesterday. You know, there was a decision that had to be made in our church. This is going way back months and months ago, and I have a dear friend who I care about. He's kind to me. I'm kind to him. He didn't say anything mean, but he didn't agree with one of my decisions. And he was sharing it with me. And it wasn't rude. It wasn't disrespectful. He was just sharing his heart. And I appreciated how he shared it. But in the end of the day, like, I have to go through months and months or 18 months of reasons why we made that decision. And to even kind of pull him into every one of those meetings with elders and staff and all that, wouldn't fully grasp it because he wasn't there. And it's still something you want to communicate. I'm one of those transparent leaders. I feel like if the church has a question, ask it, and I'll tell you. Like, I'm not hiding anything. We shouldn't hide anything. But there's this level of our volunteers drop drastically.
Yeah.
Our children's workers drop drastically. So even to say, let's have 2 services that we used to have, and why we choose not to or choose to, it's like, do we have the support system? And then about a month ago, one of the largest churches in America, I have a mutual friend she used to work at, and she said something amazing to me that really brought me peace at our decisions. And she said, "Lito, I worked at this church, one of the largest churches in America. They're awesome. They are great. They're doing awesome things for the kingdom." She says, "But what you don't know, and what churches don't know, is the amount of volunteers that they burn out is astronomical." So in my desire as a leader of a church is like, how do we help our church body maneuver through this? How do I make sure that my church body says, hey, if you're concerned about COVID, if you've got health risks, like, stay at home. We support you. We love you. But we're also here for you. You know, we even, John and I and a team tried to think, how can we get some of our church members that are still at home still feel like they're serving their church? We started this new thing with our online service having hosting, and we asked one of our church members who is still active, cares about this church, watches online every week, and we said, hey, would you want to be a part of this? And we asked a couple other people that we thought would be talented there, some that are still coming as well. But we knew this would be a great opportunity for her to serve, still feel like a body of the church, a person and a piece of that church body, without COVID and its shutdowns or the staying at home portion of it causing them to miss out. And once again, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So it's not anything like against, I'm not mad or upset, but I like it when people ask questions. Lito, why did we do this? I'm like, well, let me share it with you. Let's talk about it. Not accusatory. How dare you? Or why would you? You know, and we can have a dialogue through it because it's been tricky. And my heart breaks. You know, I'm Mexican American. So when everything was happening with the racial tension, my heart was trying to help a variety of people, no matter their skin color, put themselves in someone else's shoes. You know, I had somebody that came to me that was frustrated with some of the movements that were developed because they thought it was a hate group, and I feel like there was two, you know, tiers of this. There was the hashtags out there, and then there were the political groups that may have looked a little different. And the political groups on all sides, not just one. I'm not picking on one group. There was what's the term I want to find? It's zealots of all groups, and even Jesus, man, Jesus Christ dealt with this. And I figure, what makes me laugh is like people feel like everything we're experiencing is new. And I said it Sunday, and a 15-year-old kid came up to me and he says, Lito, I really like what you had to say, that, you know, if you feel like everything that's happening right now is new, read your Bible, read the Old Testament, because it's true. Like, there were these zealots, these Christian zealots that were so passionate that they would be willing to murder somebody for the good news. And I'm like, that's not the good news. That's not what this is supposed to be about. Even somebody like Dietrich Bonhoeffer in his own wrestling match of, this is the question, murder Hitler so that you could stop a bunch of evil, or would that be wrong? You know, and asking those questions and wrestling with that. And if you don't know anything about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Cost of Discipleship, an amazing book, read it, read his biography, amazing stuff that he dealt with, you know, man, what's that, 70, 80 years ago now? So anyways, I don't want to get on a rabbit trail of all this, and I'm kind of passionate about it, but my thought process is you can have zealots that lose their focus, and it isn't centered on Christ. And that can be very dangerous. I want us to be passionate about Jesus, but not at the sake of someone else's life or well-being. And when we start attacking people, we have to ask ourselves, man, did Jesus represent that or not? So COVID and the racial tensions and political party issues, like, it's made me disappointed on some accounts for how things make Christians look, because did we respond well? So sometimes we have to pause, I think, put ourselves in someone else's shoes, their upbringing. If somebody has been hurt by something, if we're sensitive enough to just pause and go, okay, what have they been through, so that I can understand and relate? I mean, there's obviously, I use humor as a defense mechanism. Sometimes it's not out of a defense mechanism, just a spirit of I like humor. But there are times where if I'm insecure or if I feel threatened, I'll use humor to allow myself to not feel threatened. And there are times where, Lito, you need to not use humor. You just need to be quiet and
Chandler
listen.
Bing.
The Chandler Bing, if you will. Gosh. That defense mechanism. But man, he's good.
Yeah. You know, during this whole, I think it was actually still during lockdown, or whatever you want to call it, shutdown, or whatever you want. When we were all kind of still at home, there was a series that Andy Stanley released called The Messy Middle. And he was really speaking into the hearts and minds of Christians and leaders about, you know, there's this tension of the two. You have like you mentioned, zealots, the extremes on each side, and how Christ kind of calls us. I'm not talking about political views necessarily, but I'm talking about how we treat people, and how we view the world. That tension in the middle is where we're supposed to be as believers, and to love all. But it's messy to be in the middle. You easily want to choose your tribe and go to the right or the left. But Christ calls us higher than that.
And that makes me think of even recently, a dear friend of mine, Matt Proctor, the president of the Bible college John and I went to. You know, the terminology a lot of people have been using lately is this idea of fear and faith. Like, I'm not afraid, so I'm not going to wear a mask or whatever. And I'm not making a statement whether you should or not. I can be as honest as I can. I've been vaccinated. I made decisions where there are times I wear a mask. Obviously, even if I'm not asked to. If I go in a hospital currently, I'm going to wear a mask, you know. If I even visit somebody at a house that's sick and I don't know the condition, I'm wearing a mask. I'm just trying to be smart about it. But he had said something to me that fascinated me, and I think it would bring some clarity for us as Christians, as individuals, even if you're not a Christian, to kind of find where you stand on certain things. But we hear the term, in my opinion, the church culture a lot lately, fear and faith. But he brought in one more word, and he's an alliteration guy, so whenever he can throw in as many of the same letters as possible, he will. But he also brought in the word foolishness, because there are elements that we can be foolish about our decisions. Once again, I'm not trying to make a political stand. Where I stand is, if you have a choice that you say, hey, I want to be vaccinated or I don't, that's your choice. You're an adult. You can make that decision. For your household, I believe there's freedom in that. And it's hard, you know, because each household right now, I personally know even key Christians. They may 6 months ago have been anti-vaccine, and now today they are for the vaccine, but they don't want to tell anybody because they switched their opinion
Secretly.
And
Secret vaccine.
The secret vaccine, right? And once again, that's cool. Like, you do you. Like, you don't. What's fascinating to me is that the scriptures even talk about this freedom in Christ, that just because something is beneficial, something permissible does not mean it's beneficial. Yeah. But you have to do what's right for you. I mean, the New Testament dealt with this, where people would eat meat that was sacrificed to idols because it was cheaper. And I'm not going to lie. Like, if I could get meat that's cheaper right now, I probably, if they say, oh, Lito, we sacrifice this meat to some false god, I'd be like, give me the free meat. I know that God's not real. I believe in Jesus. I'll pay the cheaper price. But Paul is talking, there's another group of people that were really against that. So there's this concept of, do we do that? Because it could make our fellow brother or sister in Christ stumble, or we choose not to. Once again, there's freedom in choice, even as a believer. And there's a list of things where there isn't that freedom. If you want to murder somebody, guess what? It's always going to be wrong, But, and then we could go into the self-defense and all that. I mean, we'll talk about that on our podcast.
I mean, I think,
that's a whole hour discussion.
Yes, exactly. We'll put that on an idea. I have an ideas list of podcast ideas, but we do have those freedoms of choice, and just as you said, just as Paul's mentioning, as long as that does not hinder our witness, does not hinder glorifying Christ in those decisions. Correct. If the choices we make is actually making Jesus look bad, or look undesirable, then we need to kind of reevaluate those decisions we're making, and not necessarily the decisions, but how we're handling those decisions and how we're wearing those decisions on our sleeves. So
exactly. Well, let's make it a little lighter. I love that topic. I could talk for days about it. The challenge is, even in a podcast, I could say something that you disagree with, and that's fine. But the next step isn't to go, oh, I'm gonna blog about it and be angry. The next step should be a discussion. So there's clarity, because I want to understand you, hopefully, as you are trying to understand me. And I think that's where our culture has hurt this last year and a half, is it's not been about trying to understand one another, but it's been making a point rather than making a difference. And I stole that line from a pastor friend of mine. Pretty sure he stole that from Andy Stanley. I cannot confirm or deny. But the idea in our culture right now with social media or whatever platform you use, we're so invested in making a point that we're not listening and we're not trying to make a difference. And that's my heart, is like, I want to make a difference. Like, we can make a point all day long, but unless we're, in the trenches with whatever the situation is, I mean, we're trying to find ways as a church that we can minister better to our community. I mean, that's what matters. Anyways, I'm going to shift us, but let's have a little fun. Let's ask this question, John. During we'll say pandemic, the thrust of it, when most things were shut down for the first few months, what became your family's go-to fun thing? Maybe you and your wife's thing that you did watch? Is there shows? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of downtime. A lot of crazy time too. We can talk about this in another podcast, but all the good things that developed out of the shutdown, of how we, we talked about the body of Christ and all different parts. There were actually new parts that were created, where people can serve in different areas, and we'll talk about that another time. But so it was a busy time as well, learning all the new things, ways we can minister to people when they're at home. Yeah. But what we did a lot as a family, we play a lot of board games. As you can tell, I got like a little.
Which one is named Pandemic?
Pandemic.
Which I really like that.
That was
I played
intentional.
Pandemic prior to COVID. But I would like to hear in the comments page, how many of you guys intentionally went out and purchased Pandemic to play during
I introduced it to
pandemic.
a few people as well during the pandemic. It really helps you figure out how to cope with the pandemic. But yeah, so these are a few games of my collection. And so as a family, we played games. My wife and I especially, a lot of the games are a little heavy for kids, and we try to get them into it. We played one game in particular called Clank, and it's a legacy version of the game. So it's like a video game where you have levels. You start with level 1 or scenario 1, and you build up. There's 10 different scenarios. You have a big map that you add stickers to, and different adventures journey, a long, huge story, like a booklet of just story that you can. It's like a choose your own adventure,
Correct.
collecting treasures, trying not to make noise so the dragon kills you, all those fun things. So that's a game that we played, and we still haven't finished it because it got a little time consuming.
Yeah,
and
I bet.
we still have a few levels on that to play. But yeah, we watched a lot of Survivor, which is another funny kind of pun for this time.
Can we
But
survive?
we watched a total of 20 seasons of Survivor. There's 40. We're on season 40. Season 41 just was released.
Wow.
Of Survivor, and we watched season 20 through 40.
I feel like one of the guys in Survivor, this is me trying to pull some memory from way back. He came and spoke at a church in my hometown. The guy that fell in the fire or something.
Oh yeah,
I think he's a Christian.
I'm
could
not.
be
I
wrong,
can't confirm that, but like I do know who you're talking about.
but
I
I
can't
felt
remember
like
his name.
he came. I don't remember
Yeah.
his name.
Yeah.
Oh man. But anyways, I say that only because I always find it fascinating when you have somebody who might profess Christ, and maybe it was afterwards. I don't know the timeline of his situation, but it's just fascinating. Then they kind of do the church tours through their Survivor, platform, if you will. But
You do feel bad for the guy. I mean, falling in a flame.
fell asleep.
He
or
fell
what?
asleep, and he just stumbled. It was more exhaustion, and he just kind of tumbled over into the fire. But as he comes back for another season, as a second chance season that they had, and you find out that he's actually a pretty clumsy guy.
Oh,
like
really?
he gashes his head. He's got like a big gash in his leg. Has a lot of tumbles and falls, and so
So like my toddler, right?
no
my
offense.
4-year-old.
If you love Jesus, I'm so happy about that. And I'm sorry for making fun of your clumsiness. Maybe it was just
People can have clumsy. I mean, I've been clumsy at times. I mean, that happens.
if you're listening to our podcast
if
or
he
watching this
comes
video, we want you to come speak at our church sometime.
Yeah, come tell us your journey.
Yeah.
We did, obviously, our family, we did a lot of home craft stuff, which, I'm not really a crafty person, but man, my daughters love to paint and color puzzles. I'm a big puzzle fan, so that's always been a thing for us. I actually bought some of those roll-up maps because my kids will destroy my puzzles. And I made the most recent puzzle I did. I'm really disappointed because I was missing quite a few pieces. And I know the kids didn't touch it because I had opened it myself and I sat there the entire time. Almost had it done, realized I'm missing pieces. I rolled it up. Haven't touched it in about 2 months because I've kind of been irritated with it right now. But I will return back to that Star Wars puzzle eventually. But
Yeah. We did a lot of home projects,
Yeah.
painting bedrooms and remodeling and all that kind of stuff.
awesome.
So that helped us kind of cope during that time.
I didn't do any of that. I didn't do remodeling. I think our neighbors, we had some neighbors move in, and they're a great couple. We really love them. They were visiting the build while the house was being built, and we had our life group over, which if you're watching and you don't know anything about church culture, life group is kind of like a Bible study group of people that come together and we share our life together, but we also go through a Bible study together. And we were all over. I think it was our kind of first hangout. And each of the families within our life group have kind of big families. We all have like 4 kids at least each. And all the kids were on the trampoline and we were playing in the backyard. And the adults were all inside, and the new neighbors came out, and they see me, and I go, "Oh, hi, how are you guys?" I go, "I'm your guys' neighbor, and these are all my children." I just wanted to scare them with about 16 kids that were just jumping and crazy, and they were like, "Oh." They didn't respond quite like that. They, I think, knew I was joking. I go, "I'm just kidding," and of course introduced myself. And great couple. It's been nice that they're in there because they're just a solid couple to have in our neighborhood. Really like them.
Which kind of brings me to another thing that we did with coping, or while we coped during COVID, was we got to know our neighbors a lot more from a distance,
Correct.
from at least 6 feet. But I mean, everybody was outside all the time on their front porch, walking, and we went on several walks, 1 to 2, at least 1 a day, sometimes 2, sometimes even 3 if we were really bored. Because you use a lot of data when you're at home, so you got to find other things to do, so you don't have to pay that whatever it is more per gigabyte. So we went on a lot of walks, got to know some great neighbors, build relationships.
What's fascinating is you and I both have a new neighbor. Well, not new neighbor. They've been our neighbors, but now they're attending our church now.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of a cool thing too. That kind of came out of all of this. Our neighbors, we've known for 2 years, moved in there, but they were eventually looking for a church, and my neighbor probably started attending a couple months ago. And I'd say your neighbor, right, VBS-ish, right? So June-ish.
Yeah. Close to VBS. I
Yeah.
think they came the Sunday before VBS, and then they started attending VBS, and then just haven't stopped since.
That's
So
awesome.
Now they're in our life group, the Word of the Day.
Word of the day, life
Life
group.
group.
If you're a big fan of Pee Wee Herman, that's when everybody screams, ah! Okay. Hopefully, wherever you're driving, you do that so that you can startle the people around you.
I did also start a new devotional. There's a podcast I listen to weekly called The Holy Post, which I do recommend. But one of the hosts of that, he's a traveling speaker, author, former pastor named Sky Datani. He wrote a book, and he's got a series now started. But the first installment was called "What If Jesus Were Serious?" and it's a study through the Sermon on the Mount, and basically how the church can often take the words of Jesus, and I'm not going to say water down, but they don't take necessarily literally. And, there's definitely applications and general principles you can take from the Sermon on the Mount. But because we often will take that and kind of make it a reason not to do it, because we're like, well, that's a general principle that doesn't apply to me in this culture. Yeah. But instead of like saying, well, how can it apply to me? We say, well, we're just going to ignore that part. And so that's what this whole book is about. And man, that just like really spoke to me. It gave me a lot of direction during this time. It's a daily, really simple devotional, which I need because I'm not a big reader. But literally like 2 pages per devotional plus pictures.
Oh, pictures, nice.
He doodles illustrations, and it really helped me. So if you were as a kid one of the people that didn't want to read a book unless it had pictures, or maybe you're an adult that's like that, I recommend that book. But that was one of the things that I did during that time. I'm not a big reader, but man, I love that book. Anything else you did? New video games? Any kind of any things you discovered during COVID?
I discovered the cure for cancer. I didn't tell anyone.
Cancer.
I'm just kidding. I am a gamer. I have been since I think 4 when my brother first got the Nintendo system from way back. We would play Double Dragon together all the time. But during COVID, I had probably right before I was putting off this game that's kind of taken the world by storm called Fortnite. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's new. No, it's been around for a few years now. And here's the thing: I had to kind of educate my sister out in California about this because her son was like, "Hey, I need to buy a new this and new that." She said, "Man, this game's expensive." What's fascinating? The game's actually free. What you can pay for is the skins or the battle pass. The battle pass is kind of cool. Like I'm a fan for the battle pass because then you spend, I think it's like $15 or whatever every 5 months instead of spending all this money on skins, which the skins just kind of change your character's look. Anyways, none of that matters. But I had to educate her. I'm like, you can tell your child no. They can still play the game without purchasing anything, and it's fun. So the kiddos, my kids play it. My daughter started playing it. My wife plays Fortnite, and it's insane. It's kind of like one of my ways to just at the end of the night, like even last night, kind of tired, so I was going to crash. I think I played 2 rounds with a pastor friend of mine, and we did not win, but we came in the top 10 a couple times. So anyways, all that to say Fortnite has been something that's been fascinating to me because culturally speaking, they've kind of turned how video games are done. A lot of the games are now following suit. Call of Duty has done this, so has the new Halo that's coming out this holiday season. The game's now free, but if you want to experience some extra add-ins, you pay for this thing called a battle pass. So once again, they're making a lot of money this way, and I'm fascinated. The entrepreneur side of me is like, that's intriguing how they did this, where this one video game company turned the model of video games the last few years.
Yeah. And he mentioned you don't have to buy anything, but if your kids watch any YouTube videos, they're going to want to buy something.
Yes, they are.
And every single birthday that actually even one with Lily, birthday money that they got, much of the money went towards V-Bucks. And my son wanted to buy a new skin the other day, and I was like, you don't have any money, buddy. And he's like, but I need it. And I was like, you already have like tons of skins. And he's like, but this one, this girl, I like Preston said that she's like the most invisible, like you can hide in places better with this skin. And I was like, that's ridiculous. So with that being said, you could play for free, but they make it as plain and
Yeah, and it's almost, here's the one caveat I am not a fan of. You can very easily accidentally spend money if your kids have V-Bucks already in there.
Yes.
You know, they give you an option to like see, there's a thing called emotes, and for some of you that know anything about video games, you'll be maybe slightly like, yeah, Lito, this is very elementary.
Emotes.
But I like to inform people that have no idea what we're talking about.
Can you show us an emote?
Well,
we have a camera now.
I'm not really like gifted at the emotes, but the emotes are like dances. Basically, somebody does them after they defeat an enemy. It's kind of their way, like saying, "Hey, you lost, sucker," you know, kind of mentality. But they'll throw in some movie things. One of my favorites is Terminator 2 from my childhood. My dad secretly took me, and my mom didn't want us to see a rated R movie. But the Terminator 2, the very last scene, he's being melted, and his hand comes up, and it's on flames. It's a thumbs up. And they have that emote. So even me, as a 38-year-old man, that emote came out, and my boys ran out. Dad, they got the Terminator emote just for you. And I'm like, yeah, that was tempting. I felt compelled to purchase it, but I have a job. My kids don't. So that's the difference.
Yeah. There was a lot of Fortnite in my house as well. Yeah. I personally opted out for Zelda.
Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild, yes. Excellent game. I'm an adventure. I like adventure games, but
I love it.
We'll kind of move on. We always want to kind of close out each video. You know, we talked about coping and the hard parts about COVID. I mean, there's so much suffering that happened. People lost loved ones. We lost a former staff member of the church. It's been a hard year, and so we do need to find ways to cope. And cope kind of has a negative connotation to it. But really, it's like, how do we find hope? How do we find...
There are good coping mechanisms.
There are good coping mechanisms, exactly. But one thing we did discuss was the division that took place, the heartbreak, the relationships that were broken, and a lot of it in the church, because the church is made of people, and people were directly affected by a lot of things that happened through COVID. And so I just wanted to kind of share a couple verses. We're going to have a little... just kind of challenge at the end of each episode. And we had two scriptures that came to mind. And I'm just going to read those scriptures, and then Lito and I can kind of talk about just for a little bit briefly, just about what we want to take home from those. But just kind of go based off of how do we cope? How do we come out of COVID, or even within the midst of COVID, because it's still here, be the light of the world. And Ephesians chapter 5 talks a lot about being light in darkness and being different from the world. And starting in verse 15, he says this: "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be foolish." We use that word in our discussion today. "Do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is." That I think is huge. I also want to read from Romans 12:18. It says, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." Now, Lita, I want you to share anything you might have to say about those two texts.
Yeah, Romans 12:18 verse. My wife and I are big on this because it seems like, and I don't want to put it just on the enemies, we all have wounds and shortcomings. So we get irritable. We get irritated with certain things. So being at peace with everyone, as far as it depends on us, is something that needs to be seen and evident. And I think during this last 18 months, people have missed opportunities to allow peace to be present, even if we disagree. And I love, there is that one line, "if it is possible." There are some people that aren't going to be at peace with other people. That's just, there could be tension. I mean, I with all of my heart and being, believe in what the scriptures teach us. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I follow him. So there will be people that are anti-God, and we're not going to be having coffee together. Like, as much as I'm like cool to have that conversation, it may not always happen, but we still can do everything on our end. They may not be able to be at peace with us, but we're going to be as best as we can. And even recently, I mean, I had a situation that I thought was very disappointing, and I'm trying to think, man, how do we work through this? It wasn't even a church-related incident. It's just life incidents where you just kind of butt heads with somebody. You're like, why is this the way it is? And you just got to kind of shake the dust off your shoes and kind of move on.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Lito. Thanks, guys, for joining us. And we got a couple of recommendations we want to put your way. I'm calling it the Pastor's Unplugged Proposals, a.k.a. Pups.
Pups.
The Pups, all right? So we're going to end every episode with the Pups. Me, I've already mentioned mine. I'm just going to be brief. Sky Jatani's devotional series, What If Jesus Was Serious? He has one that he released last year and one he released this year called What If Jesus Was Serious About Prayer. So I really, if you are a light reader, but really want to just follow Jesus and have a devotional every day with him, I highly recommend it. So that's What If Jesus Was Serious by Sky Jatani.
And I wanted to remind people, dear friend of mine, Caleb Kaltenbach, just came out with Messy Truth, another just excellent book from Caleb Kaltenbach. He's been here at our church, and he's got an amazing testimony, amazing story, but he's continuing to remind us that not everybody has, we're just not perfect, and we need to kind of move through that and keep relying on Christ through that. So check out Messy Truth by Caleb Kaltenbach.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you here in a couple of weeks. God bless you.